nothing ever actually went to plan. Everything was much harder than I thought it was. I got sued by the largest company in our industry. There was a 6-year federal lawsuit, almost went to the Supreme Court. It was crazy. Like if you had said it's going to take 10 years to get to where I am today, I don't know if I would have done it 10 years ago. That was a big leap, especially right out of college. But knowing what I know now, yeah, I got a 10-year, master's in business. Like, I love it. I would never.
Today, I'm joined by my guest, Robert Thomas Custer, RT Custer, a visionary entrepreneur whose journey began on a Christmas tree farm in Pennsylvania, where he grew up as a fourth-generation farmer and entrepreneur. Guided by core values like respect, integrity, empathy, freedom, and wealth, RT is driven by a passion for building lasting legacies. His favorite quote, "Plant trees under whose shade you'll never sit," defines his approach to business and life. In 2014, RT co-founded Vortic Watch Company with Tyler Wolff, turning a college idea into a thriving enterprise dedicated to preserving American history one watch at a time. Their signature product, the American Artisan Series, transforms antique American pocket watches into unique, handcrafted wristwatches made entirely in the United States. RT's pursuit of the American dream faced a dramatic twist when Vortic was sued by the Swatch Group in a David versus Goliath legal battle over their upcycling practices. After a grueling 6-year journey, Vortic emerged victorious in 2021, setting a precedent for the right to upcycle. Now, RT is sharing his experience through an innovative project, American Dreamers, the David vs. Goliath story defending the right to upcycle, blending a YouTube docuseries and AI-driven storytelling. So let's unravel the fingerprints on success of RT Custer. Hey everyone, welcome to Fingerprints on Success. Today I'm joined by my guest RT Custer from Vortic Watch Company, the founder. RT, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Bill. I'm excited to be here.
So RT, I know there's a lot to the history of what you've done since you founded the company, I believe in 2014. But for our listeners, the entrepreneurs out there that follow us, tell us a little bit about the background on how you came up with the idea for this business and how you got it off the ground to get to where you are today.
Yeah, so for Vortic, really, I mean, it was, 12 years ago at this point. My business partner at that time, co-founder Tyler, and I had a bunch of crazy ideas on the golf course after school one day at Penn State University, and we were studying engineering, and we were talking about things that aren't made in America that we couldn't figure out why. Like what were these products, or why were these products made overseas and not made in USA? And the topic of discussion that day was watches, mostly because he was wearing a watch while he was playing golf and I wasn't. And I was just like, I don't understand how you can like swing a golf club with something on your wrist. Like, I just asked him all these questions about watches and like why he was so into it. And then we applied that discussion we were having with our friends of like, things that are made in USA, and watches are just, at our understanding at that time was they just weren't made in America. And to make a really long story short, we did a bunch of research after that round of golf. And we said, you know what? Like, I wonder if we could make a watch in America. Tyler was really interested in watches. I was really interested in engineering. I love marketing. A watch company just sounded like a really fun idea. And so we just went down the rabbit hole of like, were there any watches made in USA ever? And we stumbled on the history of what I call the great American watch companies. And these were companies in the early 1900s that manufactured pocket watches in the United States, mostly Boston to Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
And those pocket watches, fast forward to today, 100 years later, nobody has any use for a pocket watch today. And they're all gold and silver. And so they're getting scrapped left and right and basically thrown away. And the light bulb went off, and it was, what if we upcycled those old pocket watches, turned them into wristwatches? Big watches are kind of popular, and we can make the outside, the bigger parts of the watch, we can make those in America. And yeah, that we call it the American Artisan Series, or today just a Vortic watch, like a beautiful clash of old and new, Vortex and TikTok. That's where Vortic comes from. And we put that idea on Kickstarter in 2014. And yeah, 10 years later, we've sold every watch we've made. So um, got lucky and had a good idea.
Yeah, that's incredible. So do you manufacture a brand new watch that looks like the old, or are you literally taking older watches and then kind of repurposing them, if you will, into something new?
Yeah. So, I mean, technically, we do both now. I have a separate brand called Colorado Watch Company. That's a fully modern watch that we manufacture, and they're kind of designed to look like the old stuff. But Vortic, all the stuff you see at vorticwatches.com, those are all 100-year-old pocket watch faces, the dial of the watch, the face, the hands, and then the mechanism, all the gears and springs inside. We call it the movement. All the guts of that wristwatch was a pocket watch. It was the guts of a pocket watch. And we're literally upcycling those pocket watch internals and turning them into wristwatches. And we call it a Vortic watch. And so what we do is we make the outside. I call it an engineering system. The industry calls this a pocket watch conversion. We're taking a pocket watch and converting it to a wristwatch. And we're manufacturing all the metal parts on the outside, the glass that's on the front and back, so you can see everything. And then, the things that you touch on the outside of the watch to wind it and set the time and all that kind of stuff. We make those in Colorado, but the inside, yeah, it's an upcycled, restored piece of American history.
That's so cool. And how did you initially get it to market? Like, I mean, you had the idea, and how did you get it off the ground, I guess, in terms of, funding and kind of getting to the marketplace to say, hey, everybody, look what we got.
Yeah. Well, so it was November 17 of 2014. We launched on Kickstarter and we tried to crowdfund the idea. We set the goal at $10,000 because we thought, if we had $10,000, we can do anything.
Right.
And we were right out of college. We thought that was a lot of money. We ended up making 41,000 on Kickstarter from about 60 random people that a few friends and family that backed us, but mostly just people who found us through the power of crowdfunding and Kickstarter itself. And just people that liked watches and liked American made, and they just thought, hey, this is a really cool idea. Um, and yeah, that was 10 years ago. And throughout the last 10 years, I've done several rounds of angel investment, funding. I've used every form of SBA financing and loan capital I could get my hands on. Just doing everything I can to keep the small business going. And most recently, I launched Colorado Watch Company as a separate brand because we can only make so many pocket watches and turn them into wristwatches. We're kind of limited to about 300 watches a year. That's what I've found over the last few years. That's a really good number, and it's a great business. But I want to run a big business, and so Colorado Watch Company is our first foray into scale and making thousands of watches. Because over the last 10 years, we built a manufacturing company to make watches in America, and so why make just hundreds when we can make thousands? And I like to say, why let the Swiss have all the fun?
And so are the newer ones are now kind of modeled after the old? Is that the concept, or?
Yeah. We have a field watch and we have a GCT. The field watch is, you can tell like the numeral style and some of the dials, they look kind of like those old pocket watches. And so there's inspiration there. And then what I call the GCT is basically a modernization of Vortic Watch Company's most famous watch, which is called the Military Edition. And for Vortic's Military Edition, we take antique pocket watches that were used in World War II. They're black dials and they're 24-hour dials. They were used by the U.S. Army Air Corps during World War II on B-17s and similar aircraft. Those watches for Vortic, we only make them on Veterans Day. They sell out instantly. They're really hard to get your hands on. And so we make a watch called the GCT that's on my wrist today. And it's basically a modern automatic replica of that pocket watch turned into a wristwatch. So those are our first two models for Colorado Watch Company. But really, I changed from LLC to a C Corp last year and created basically the backbone of what I call Vortic Inc. now. And we are trying to help other brands and other people that want to make watches in America actually do that. It's very, very difficult to make these products in the United States, and it's very difficult to take on the big Swiss conglomerates that own most of the industry. And so, we're kind of creating our own little like micro brewery accelerator or incubator, if that makes sense, but in wristwatches made in USA.
So how do you, just out of curiosity too, how do you, what's like the driving thrust of your marketing now? How do you get the word out on such a unique product and the whole fact that it is completely manufactured in the U.S. Because I know there's a lot of people out there, a lot of clients of mine, a lot of listeners to this program who, not only like to buy American, but do want to try to provide all of their building and materials and things that they utilize for their businesses through American companies. How are you getting that word out to grow and scale?
Yeah. So first for Vortic Watch Company, I mean, we only make 300 watches a year, so marketing for that is just fun. It doesn't have to be stressful. It's like I could go door to door in Denver and sell 300 watches if I had to. And so for that, I focus mostly on our service that nobody else really does, which we call convert your watch. So if you have grandpa's pocket watch, you can bring it to us, and there's a very good likelihood that we can turn it into a wristwatch as long as it's American made pocket watch. And so we just tell stories about that product and process and service on Facebook and YouTube. And, I put out as much video content as I can about what we do. For Colorado Watch Company, it's really fun because it's kind of a new startup brand. And so we're just being really transparent about where and how we make everything. So we're the only watch company that publishes the percentage of cost of goods that's American. So I can tell you that what's on my wrist is 85% American made by cost. And so for every $100 that you send to Colorado Watch Company, 85 of those dollars stay right here in the USA, only 15 leave. And that is 2 or 3 times more than most other watch companies and watch manufacturing companies in our price range. And the only way we can do that is with scale. And so I, again, put out a lot of videos about like, here's how we make this part. Here's how we make that part. Here's why we can't make this particular component in the US. Nobody does this. And if you know somebody that might want to try, send me an email, and it's almost like, again, crowdsourcing and kind of just welcoming the customer into our own story. And what I try to do for both brands and everything I talk about is, just focus on the American dream, like we just talk about like, why are we doing this? Well, we're creating American jobs. We're creating opportunity. We're making things here. We can make things in a high quality, and we can make things at scale here. All the other reasons that people like American made. But for me, it's like, we're building a business and we're building a lifestyle, and that's the dream.
And imagine that you know, if you were able to find, let's just say, you stumbled upon, thousands of these vintage pocket watches made in America, there's obviously like a high demand and a market. How, for the ones that you do manufacture, how do you find them? Like, how do you get the old pocket watches in your hands?
Yeah. So, great question. It's a number one question we get, and that's actually not the limiting factor of the business. We'll circle back to the limiting factor of Vortic Watch Company is the skilled trade gap, and just not having enough skilled workers to actually know how to restore the pocket watches once I get them. But every day somewhere in America, a pawn shop, a jewelry store, or a watchmaker goes out of business or passes away. And that's the estate auction industry. And so let's say grandpa was a watchmaker. He had a little shop in his basement for 20, 30 years, passes away. Nobody else in the family knows anything about watches. They call up an estate buyer. The estate buyer comes in and buys everything. The Rolexes go to this person. The diamonds and jewelry and gold and silver go to this person. And then there's a bunch of pocket watches left over. And so all these estate buyers have all these pocket watches they don't know what to do with, and they take them to auctions. And so I go to the estate auctions, which there's only a couple of that focus on, especially American pocket watches and jewelry and things like that. And I buy hundreds of pocket watches at a time. I cherry pick, the best of the best that I can find. I bring them home here to Fort Collins, Colorado. And then my watchmakers, who, have done this, some of them longer than I've been alive, cherry pick from the ones that I found. And we get the best of the best American pocket watch movements, again, just the guts, because most of the time the gold and silver, the case of the watch or pocket watch was scrapped. And we save those insides and restore them. And then, we're making all the other parts here. So that's the process and the supply chain in a nutshell.
Yeah. So now you've been at this for 11 years and, you've got the new business now, and obviously, you continue to grow and develop. When you look back on that time, do you think that there was certain kind of beliefs or mindsets that you guys had that you think were difference makers in terms of like the positive outcome that you're experiencing and being able to grow the business and now kind of morph into this kind of natural offshoot of what you were already doing into a much more scalable business? Were there certain mindsets or beliefs you think you had that were critical in getting there?
Yeah, I mean, I keep saying, somebody said this to me recently, and I believe it in my soul now. You have to be, in order to be an entrepreneur, you have to be somewhat delusional. You have to not fully understand the risks and everything that you're looking at before you dive in. And so I wish I could tell you like everything went to plan, and this was the idea the whole time. I had a plan the whole time, and I always have, these core beliefs of like, let's make it in America, let's create as many jobs as we can, let's stick to high quality products, let's tell a great story with the product. Like I could make you a list of all those things that like are core beliefs for me and the company now. But nothing ever actually went to plan. Everything was much harder than I thought it was. I got sued by the largest company in our industry. There was a 6-year federal lawsuit, almost went to the Supreme Court. It was crazy. Like if you had said it's going to take 10 years to get to where I am today, I don't know if I would have done it 10 years ago. That was a big leap, especially right out of college. But knowing what I know now, yeah, I got a 10-year master's in business. Like I love it. I would never be able to not be an entrepreneur again. And I've learned so much. And I think the biggest thing that I've accidentally built from these core values of, made in USA and quality and trying to create, American jobs is a community of customers behind me. I have about 50,000 people on my email list right now, and those people get an email once a week from me, mostly with just pictures of watches. Like, here's what we're working on this week. But those customers and those followers, I mean, they're very loyal. They buy things all the time. I mean, when we were going through our lawsuit, people just bought hats and t-shirts to support us and said, hey, don't even send me the shirt. I just wanted to send you $40. I don't know many other entrepreneurs that like have such a loyal customer base that is just like, they're more like fans than customers. And I'm really proud of that. And I think, to your point, it's really about those core values and doing the right thing and doing exactly what you said you're going to do the whole time.
Well, it's interesting that you say that because for our entrepreneurs that listen to this podcast, one of my recent guests was Charlie Clifford, the founder of Toomey Luggage. Obviously a worldwide household name brand. And I asked him a question about scaling. Talk about scaling. Like literally, you can't go to an airport without seeing a Toomey store, right? You can't anywhere in the world. And he talked about, and it ties right into what you're saying, so that's why I'm drawing the connection. He talked about building trust.
Mm-hmm.
And he said that, the reason that they were able to scale, in his opinion, was he built trust through the distribution channels and trust with the customers that, they were getting a high quality, well-designed, elegant product that the company stood behind. And if there was ever an issue, the company always made good on it and built this loyal following of trust, both in the kind of the supply chain and the end user. And
Yep.
he traced it all back to trust in product and trust in service, and and really you're saying a very similar thing, which is kind of like an interesting fact to tie together, because a lot of times as we have all these interviews on this podcast with successful entrepreneurs like yourself and like Charlie and many others, um, there's so many common themes that seem to always come out. It's just kind
Yeah.
of interesting when you see them play out, described maybe slightly different, but at the end of the day, really quite similar.
No,
So
that's so cool. I'm so excited to listen to that episode. I'm a huge Toomey fan. I have a carry on in my backpack, and I've had him for years and years. And I don't know anything about the brand, but I trust it implicitly. So yeah, I can't wait to listen to his story. That sounds so
yeah.
cool.
And I too have a carry on, and that so it's
Yeah.
like it's one of those things. I mean, our firm actually represented to me for many years, which is
Oh,
why
cool. Yeah.
I knew Charlie. But
Yeah, that's awesome.
yeah, no, it's very cool. So now, on the flip side of things, let's talk a little bit about kind of when you look back, over the last, I guess, 11 years, right? Um, what are some things that you wish you didn't do, right? So there's the
Yeah.
things that you say that we relied on core values and things, and that was so valuable. If you could kind of advise yourself a few years back, what you wouldn't do, what are some of those things?
Yeah. So I guess the first thing that comes to mind is I guess slightly different. It's more of like I wish I would have asked for help sooner, and I guess I didn't ask for help soon enough is probably the direct way to answer that question. Um, because I had this community, I had all these customers that love my brand and wanted to support, especially when we were going through our lawsuit. I bottled all that stuff up, and I didn't ask for help, and I had amazing attorneys, Harvard attorneys on my email list. I could have just said, "Hey, how do I, what do I do? Do you know anyone that's an expert at trademark law?" And I would have gotten a lot more help than I did, waiting so long. So that's the first one. The other one is, and I made a mistake like this again about a year ago, for the life of the company. And I feel like sometimes you have to do things a few times to like really grind it in and be like, yeah,
Right.
we can't do this anymore. But for several times I've sold things before they existed, right? Like pre-orders on Kickstarter. I mean, it's how we launched the brand, right? It's like, you're ordering the watch from a crowdfunding website, and then it takes 6 to 12 months for you to get the watch. That 6 to 12 months for me, from the brand, like you just paid for a watch in full that I'm not going to ship you for 6 plus months. Just owing people something for that long. And in this case, I did a Kickstarter for Colorado Watch Company. And a few months after the launch of the Kickstarter, my co-founder and business partner told me he wanted to do something else with his life and move on, and he was running all of our manufacturing. And it's not his fault, but for that reason and all kinds of other reasons, like having to hire more engineers and learn that side of the business myself, now that like 6 to 12 months has turned into like 12 to 18 months for some of these customers to get their watch. And 95% of them are amazing, and they're sending us, I'm putting out YouTube videos every month saying like, here's what we're working on, here's how it's going, we're taking pre-orders, all that kind of stuff. And they're answering, they're saying, great job, it's all good, take your time, like I want it to be done right, I love what you're doing, the product is going to be twice as good as we ever thought, so like it's worth it. But I wish I wouldn't have sold something before I could say, you can ship it, like I'll ship it tomorrow. And
Sure.
so I made a different decision this year in order to never do that again, which is I'm currently raising money, and I'm just going to invest in more machines and inventory, and then do more like what Toomey does and have a network of retailers, in order to scale and sell through retailers. And once I get to that kind of scale, then I'll be able to self-fund new product development and inventory and things like that, and I won't have to take pre-orders and pre-sell anything anymore. So that's a big learning. It's just so hard to communicate everything in that process. And it's one of the things that, you know, prevents me from sleeping some nights, because I owe a lot of people a lot of things. And that's just not a great feeling.
Yeah.
Solvable, but not a good thing. So I'm not going to do it again.
Understood. So you mentioned a couple of times this lawsuit, which, almost, David versus Goliath almost kind of knocked you off the rails. Tell the listeners a little bit about that. I believe it was with the Swatch Group, right?
Yep. Yeah, that's correct. So Swatch Group purchased the trademark to Hamilton Watch Company in, I think, 1972. Hamilton Watch Company made pocket watches in the United States, specifically in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, from about 1895 until 1969, when they went out of business. I had no idea how trademarks work. I studied engineering. I started a business. We were taking old pocket watches and turning them into wristwatches. I had a general, counsel at the time who just helped me create the LLC and stuff like that. And, we asked some of those questions about, like, okay, like what's the premise here? And any legal advice I ever got was just like, oh, well, what you're doing is art. Plus, what you're doing is such a small scale. Like, I don't see any issue with it. And so what we're doing, though, specifically, is we're taking a pocket watch that says somebody else's brand on the face of it, front and center,
Right.
on the dial of the watch, and I'm turning that into a wristwatch. One of those 10 brands, there was Hamilton, Elgin, Waltham, Ball, all these great American watch companies, but one of them is Hamilton, and Hamilton is owned by Swatch. So we got a cease and desist from the Swatch Group after we put out a magazine ad that talked about what we were doing. And I put a beautiful picture of one of our, what I call the Lancaster watches, which is a Hamilton pocket watch turned into a wristwatch, in this magazine. And they basically accused us of trademark infringement and counterfeiting. Trademark infringement, kind of obvious, it's their brand on the front of our watch.
Right.
And then counterfeiting, they accused us of, manufacturing our own components or even printing their name on that dial, and like using their name to make money. At that time, I didn't know anything about any of this stuff. I was just like, oh, this is a certified letter from the largest company in our industry. That's kind of scary.
Yes, it is.
And so, and some of the initial advice I got was like, oh, cool, you made it. You got sued. Which, isn't great. But like,
no, especially when you're just trying to get off the ground, and then you find out what a good defense lawyer will cost in the world of trademark.
Yeah, exactly. All of a sudden. So, I got a massively quick education on how trademarks work and what the potential was there. And I started for about 5 years trying to, against my, I had four different attorneys throughout the whole 6-year process, but against most of their advice, I reached out around the legal system and I tried to find the CEO of Swatch and the CMO and the, chief legal officer. And it just said like, hey, first of all, I'm a kid. I just graduated college. I'm just getting started. I think what we're doing is just upcycling, and I'm actually helping your brand because I'm talking about the history of the Hamilton Watch Company and all these things. Can I just buy you a cup of coffee and like show you what I'm trying to do and just like prove to you that I'm not a threat in any way? And this seems like a miscommunication. And a bunch of times I got slaps on the wrist. But one time I got a response, and this goes back to the values. And maybe a little ego, right? Like I was a kid. And the chief legal officer of Swatch at the time, for lack of better terms, said, it'll all be over soon, kid, and it insulted me and just said like, I think she said the post or the letter you wrote to our CEO was just as much of a waste as the postage stamps used to get it here to Switzerland, something like that. And I was just like, oh my God. Okay. And I showed that to the attorney and he was just like, yeah, you really shouldn't have sent this letter. This is, we got to follow process.
Yeah. You're not allowed to contact them directly because you're in the middle of a lawsuit.
I was doing everything wrong. But what I learned by doing that is that this had nothing to do with what was right and wrong and the law. And they were just trying to put me out of business. They were just like, I was a fly to them, just like, get out of here. And then I did a bunch of research and they have a, scorched earth policy. And so at that point, I was advised to give up because there was just no way I could afford to defend myself on these things. And I Googled Colorado best bankruptcy attorney. And I just wanted to explore what that looked like. And I found my way to my new friend, Rob Lance, who ran a different law firm. He said, like, the good news is I can help you. The bad news is I'm not that type of bankruptcy attorney. I'm the type of attorney that like sues big companies when they falsely file for bankruptcy when they don't need to. And I'm a litigator, but my business partner is an expert in trademarks. And so that set off the last like 2.5 years of the lawsuit, where I found someone who just really cared, who really wanted to help. And he didn't send me a bill for like 2 years throughout that whole process. And it really didn't cost me much to defend myself. We tried to, do it as low cost as possible. And when I got a chance to stand, up in front of a judge and do the official Southern District of New York, court appearance, he said, just keep talking, because you haven't done anything wrong. You're protected by all these things. And if the judge really understands what you're doing, she'll see that this is just, corporate bullying, and you're going to be okay. And she did. I mean, Judge Nathan at that point, she was like, she let me talk. I mean, I talked for like 2 hours, told the whole story. Basically, this podcast, like, here's what we do. Here's all this stuff.
Right.
And she even at one point, she's like, hey, can I see your watch? And I took off my watch and handed it to them, and they entered it into evidence and all these things. It was really interesting. And I had my day in court, and then, 6 months later, which this was all over 2020. So that was weird. But 6 months later, the ruling came out, which was like 40 pages long. And she said afterwards, she had to write a really in-depth ruling because it was one of the other judges in the process, like the mediator or one of the advisors, they said, this is an interesting case, and you do not want to be the defendant in an interesting case because we need this law. Like, nobody's ever been sued for something like what you're doing. So we need you to try, like, we got to have this written down.
Right. And the judge knows that it has to be incredibly thorough on the opinion,
exactly,
because the losing party is going to look to appeal it and look for flaws in the judge's decision.
Which, and they immediately appealed, and the appeal was intense. And then, we went to the panel of judges for the appellate court. And that was a Zoom call at that point. And that was fascinating. And, but back to the core values, I was just like, first of all, like, if I don't do this, if I don't see this through, like, it's going to wipe out the entire business model. You're like, I felt like at a certain point I was kind of protecting upcycling, and this art of recycling stuff. And, what it came down to legally was the first use doctrine, art, and then just proving that we didn't confuse the customer, which they never did a study. They never did, like, that would have changed a lot if they did like a customer study and interviewed a bunch of customers.
Right.
They thought they had it in the bag the whole time. And I think they thought I was going to give up or, surrender at a certain point. And like I said, maybe I'm delusional, or maybe I just was very undereducated on how all that stuff works. Or maybe, like, it was another one of those massive learning experiences that I'm so grateful for now, because, like, I'm not afraid of anything, at this point. If I can do that, like, I can run a watch company day to day. Like, this is easy.
That's right.
So massive learning experience. Met some amazing people, like my attorney, Rob, who's now a good friend. And our customers really rallied behind us, and they realized pretty early that this was a David and Goliath story, and this was America versus Switzerland. And again, if I didn't stand up and do it, I don't know, my life would look very different right now. And the watch industry would look pretty different, because I think a lot of other American watch brands would have said, like, oof, I don't know, is this worth it? And now there's like 100 American watch brands taking on the Swiss. And that's really exciting to me. And I think that's awesome. So if I was just a small part on that little decision of, like, we can do this, that makes me really proud.
That's great. It's a great story. And and as you said too, for the community, that looking to do business in the world of upcycling, kind of a game changer, because if they prevail on that and create precedent on that, you know, it stifles, an entire marketplace and by you prevailing, you've kind of breathed life into that marketplace. So it's a very cool story. I guess I particularly appreciate it as a lawyer. Um, it's a fun story, and it just goes to show you too that, when the law's on your side and you can stick it out, you can get to the right outcome. So
Yeah, for
so
sure.
it, it's nice when it ends up. It's nice when the good guys win.
Yeah. Well, and it's nice when the system works, right? Like the judge wrote a very thorough response to everything. And the appellate ruling was also very thorough. Like, the system was doing its job, and it protected me, the little guy, from the giant foreign conglomerate.
Yeah.
Because legally I hadn't done anything wrong.
Right.
Um, and so yeah, for that I'm immensely grateful, and I have a huge respect now for attorneys and everyone in that process, because the wealth of knowledge that was like in those courtrooms vastly outweighed, me as the 20 something kid who's just trying to make a watch.
Yeah. Well, like you said, when it works the way it was built to work and it works correctly, it's nice when the outcome is correct.
Yeah.
I wish I could say it always goes that way,
Yep.
but I'm glad it did in your case.
Me too.
So let's talk a little bit about mentorship. When you look back on your entrepreneurial journey so far and building these businesses, were there any important people along the way that you think, but for them being part of your life or kind of coaching you along the way, that maybe the outcome wouldn't be where you are today?
Yeah, 100%. And I'll like real quick just kind of rattle off a few, because I could do a whole podcast about each one of these people. First is my dad. My dad, from a really early age, when I was a little kid, he read me books, and at the end he would talk to me, and really the message was, you can do anything you put your mind to, and I can do anything, and I have that as a core belief, that I can do anything. And I love that now, especially that I'm a father. I have two little boys, 5 and 7, and I can say the same thing to them. And I also, at this point, have the opportunity to not just say it, but do it and show them that I can do anything. So can they. And that's awesome. And I love my dad for that. I think he knew what he was doing at that point, and I think he knew that could, turn into a core belief. But I don't know what I'm doing as a dad, so it's kind of fun
Yeah,
now to like to
they don't
do
give you a
that.
playbook with it, but
You can
like
read all those books.
you got some good lessons though, and
Yeah,
those lessons you'll find. I'm a little bit older than you, and you'll find that you find yourself becoming your parents in many respects,
yep, yep.
so as they say, the apples don't fall far from the tree sometimes.
Yeah. And becoming my dad would be a wonderful thing. So I look forward to that. And so yeah, my dad first, and he's still an investor and an advisor, and a mentor every day to me. Um, Michael Pollack, who he just recently sold it, but he built Hyde Park Jewelers in Denver, Colorado. Been in the watch industry for 40 years. Just a wealth of knowledge in the industry, but started as an investor in the company, and has become a friend. And just like somebody like that can, it's just like, hey, do you know anyone that does this, right? Like finding a mentor who has deep experience in the industry you're in, um, can change your life. And for me, Michael has been wildly valuable for that. My co-founder, Tyler, who doesn't work with me anymore, he's moved on to something else fairly recently. But he, I don't think he ever meant to be like a mentor in some of these things, but he had some really insightful thoughts as we were like, working on business plans and stuff together. And one of them early on was, I was answering every single email that came into the company, and I was doing all the customer service and sales myself, which, is startup life. Like that's just what it is. But he told me at one point, he's like, what if every time you open your mouth, you spoke to thousands of people instead of just one person? And what he meant at that point was like, what if we spent more time on social media? He's like, I don't have time for that. I'm making the watches. But like, what if you, flip the camera around and like talk to social media a lot more? What I took and did with that actually came from a different mentor of mine, Chris and Nick Harder, who are now investors, but they are influencers, have big followings in social. One of them recommended at like a mastermind I was at to own your audience, right? And you don't own your Instagram followers. You know, you don't have any of their information or anything of those things. The algorithm stands between you and them. But email marketing, you own that person's email address, and it's pretty hard to change your email address. You're not going to change your like normal personal email address very often, if
Right.
ever. And so at that time, I think I had like 3,000 emails on my list that were just random people that signed up. I hadn't put any effort into it and all that. In early 2020, I started sending a weekly email newsletter and really focused on email marketing. And now, yeah, we're up to about 50,000 people on that list that they get an email from me every Thursday and have for, you know, going on 5 years. And so, yeah, just little takeaways like that from mentors, masterminds, events, and, you know, business partners, co-founders, like those little ideas can snowball pretty fast if you put the consistency and effort into them. And so honestly, all of that goes back into asking for help. You know, a mentor is great, but unless you ask the mentor the right question and you know, stay in touch with the mentor and you're consistent about it, you might as well not have one. So, I would like to say I did all of that on purpose, but again, it was just you know, I'm grateful and I'm lucky to have some great people around me and in my circle.
Yeah, I think it's great. And you know, it kind of falls under the heading of you never want to be the smartest person in the room, right? It's always great to surround yourself with a lot of people that have a lot to offer and take it all in. And, you know, you always find pearls of wisdom when you get surrounded by the right people. What do they call it? Like, you know, the law of proximity, right? Get around
Mm-hmm.
where there's something better and see what happens.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
100%.
so tell me, you know, when you get out of bed in the morning, what's got you excited about the future? When you think about why you're doing this and kind of what's got you pumped up as you look ahead, what are you most excited about?
Yeah, currently I'm most excited about scale. For 10 years, you know, I've built Vortic, which is a beautiful business and everybody loves, you know, the pocket watches turn into wristwatches. It's just so fun. But we can only make a few hundred watches a year. And so to me, it's like I could have one machine, maybe two machines, 2 or 3 watchmakers and a salesperson, and I'd be good. And you know, and that's the American dream, right? Like with that, I could have a 7-figure business and a house and, you know, a piece of commercial real estate. And gosh, that'd be the life. But for me, no, that's nothing. You know, like that's boring. You know,
Right.
I want a big company. I want to have multiple buildings. I want to have hundreds of employees. And I don't know why, but like that's just exciting. So that's what gets me excited is scale. And so yeah, I'm raising money from investors right now. I just ordered another machine. I got a couple more job descriptions going up on the website and hiring more people. It's so fun to hire new people. Like especially when you put yourself out there. Like I have so many like videos like this on the internet, YouTube videos and all that kind of stuff, that like when somebody applies to work here, I send them a few videos of like, here's what we do, here's how we do it, here's like 3 hours of you know, me talking about what we do. And by the time they come in for the interview, they're like, I kind of already know what it's like to work here. Like I'm stoked, you know? And so yeah, it's just and they're great. Like it helps us narrow down and like filter the candidates really well, because if they're excited, you know, we want excited people. And that fuels the excitement. And so, and I'm an extrovert, and I, you know, I get all this energy from other humans. And so I think that's one of the reasons I want to scale, is just to have more humans around me all the time. Like you said, proximity is power. Like proximity is better when there's a lot more people that are all excited, you know, working on the same thing. Um, and you know, part of that is also having, you know, thousands of customers, hopefully tens of thousands of customers, and not just hundreds, because that's proximity too. And that's massive excitement. You know, all these people, when they buy a watch, whether it's a Vortic or a Colorado watch, you know, they feel like they're investing in the American dream, or at least investing in mine. And that's so freaking cool. So yeah, I keep thinking like, if I don't do this, no one else is going to. And I have just this massive, you know, opportunity right in front of me. It's mine to lose.
Yeah.
And that's all exciting to me.
Yeah, well, that is exciting and it's a lot of fun. And I can relate very much, in building my law firm and, getting to the point where we're up to 230 employees. And a lot of
Wow.
people say, oh, wow, that must come with a lot of complications and a lot of aggravation. And I'm like, no, that comes with excitement and fun and, so many new and interesting people and just, able to touch so many more people. And it really makes every day coming to work a lot of fun. So,
Yeah.
I wish you well on your journey, on your continued journey, and your continued success. And I hope you check back in with us and our listeners as you continue to move forward and grow and scale your business. I'm super intrigued too. I'm going to be looking for a watch for myself. I just really was thrilled to have you on today, and I want to thank you for taking the time.
Yeah, thank you, Bill. This is great. And yeah, you said the word fun a couple of times in there. I just keep saying to my team and even just my friends and my family, like, if we're not having fun, what are we doing? Why are we doing this? So I like your mindset on that stuff. And I really appreciate you and your time.
Thanks.